when they talk about denazification today, when Putin talks about that, people need to understand the sacrifice that Russia made in World War II. 27 million
I'm going to go with
Russians,
27.
yeah, that died in World War II to defeat the Nazis. That continues to reverberate throughout the country. That sacrifice was so great that we don't understand why they're so, I think, passionate about what Nazis in Ukraine.
Scott Ritter made a really interesting point in an interview I saw with him recently. It was around Victory Day back in May. There's VE Day on May 8th, celebrating the end of the war. And then the next day is when Russia celebrates it, May the 9th, and they have their big Victory Day parade in Red Square. And they have many celebrations throughout the year. Victory Day is the largest. They have monuments all over the country. It's a national holiday. Everybody gets day off from work. I think they get a few days off from work to remember the fallen. And that's because every living person pretty much in Russia today, if they're native, has someone, and they lost someone in their family. Sometimes they lost several members of their family in that war. So it's far more personal to them. But his point was, you don't see the United States doing that. When was the last time we had a huge military parade to mark our victories in World War II? We barely even celebrate or mark Pearl Harbor Day anymore. We don't remember that history. We don't honor that history. It's not as personal to us. We were not invaded. Our country didn't have a ground war like they did, a bloody, grinding war of attrition that went on for 4 years. We don't have any way to fathom that. The worst it got for us was Pearl Harbor. Not so for them.
And here's a truth bomb for everyone. In Canada, our politicians pay lip service to our veterans. They go through the motions on Remembrance Day in Canada. And the rest of the year, they reject our veterans. They don't take care of them. They act like they're ashamed of the flag. They act like they're ashamed of those who have served. They don't support the actual veterans. We have a guy like James Topp marching across the country, and they won't even talk to him. They've taken things to such a level where they've gone to such lengths to make Canadians ashamed of their own country and of the history that even the people that run the legions, which are supposed to be for the veterans, banned James Topp from holding events at some of the Legion branches. They flew our flag at half staff for months after that, incident. With our politicians, our leaders don't honor our veterans. Everything went south after Afghanistan, especially after Afghanistan. It started before that, but especially after Afghanistan. Now everything is flipped upside down, turned on its head. And if you're patriotic in any way, if you support the country, if you fought for the country, you have to be rejected because they don't believe in the country anymore. And veterans, they're a representation of nationalism, patriotism, and they can't have any of it. That's the truth here today. It's a different story in Russia. They are very nationalistic and patriotic. That's part of the difference. That's one of the things that divides Russia and the West. So instead of really fighting for democracy in Ukraine, where there is actually no democracy, we all need to be asking ourselves, what the hell are we really fighting for? It sure as heck isn't national pride in Canada. It isn't for democracy in Ukraine. And I think now that we're seeing today, as we've illustrated during this broadcast, that 70% of all the aid that's being sent over there is being funneled and laundered and lining the pockets of corrupt people somewhere who exactly we don't know. I think the true motives are beginning to bubble to the surface. We need to be asking very tough questions of our politicians. Very,
Yeah.
very tough questions.
And what they're not telling you, I didn't see them really, they barely touched on it in the CBS documentary about this. Um, a lot of those missing weapons are being either captured by Russia or destroyed by Russia before they get to the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
So, as they say, it's a joke in Russia. Maybe they're not really joking, but every time they capture a new cache of American weapons, they say, Russia thanks you for your donations, America.
And the
Thanks.
ones, and we
We'll
need
put
to be
these to good
thinking,
use.
and people need to be thinking long term, because those weapons that are finding their way onto the black market might someday, in the not too distant future, be turned against us. You're a parent, you've got kids, maybe they'll go off to war someplace, as our politicians don't seem to care about their welfare. But you think about that. What happened to all those weapons that were just left behind in Afghanistan? What's
Yeah.
going to happen to them in the future? Who will they be pointed at? We might just be killing ourselves.
This will come back to haunt us. Just
Uh-huh.
as when we trained and armed the Afghan, the radical jihadis in the late 70s, and we created Osama bin Laden. That comes back to haunt.